Grand Prix Project podcast.
All right, welcome once again, beautiful people. Welcome to the Grand Prix Project with me, your boy Andre, and the big bro.
Thanos 876, the fire starter.
All right, bro, yeah. Second GP of the season, the Chinese Grand Prix.
First sprint race as well.
Your first sprint race as well. Yeah, let's start out with, when it started from qualifying, let's get right into qualifying. McLaren space, how did that go for you? What's your feeling on that?
I mean, if you look at the sprint race, I think they both failed to deliver what they should have delivered. Yeah, as a Lewis fan, I was happy he was on pole. But at the same time, if you look at the performance of the McLarens, they should have easily been a 1-2 on pole because Lando left about 3/10 on the table. And pretty much it was the same for Piastri. But outside of that, I think in that regard, that's where the big surprise was because nobody really anticipated Lewis was going to be on pole. But he had one lap, he did it, came really close between him and Max because it was 0.018 between the two of them for pole. So yeah, that was a bit, that was good for Lewis. And we see the same problem happening again for Liam Lawson. Again, failed to make it out of Q1. So there's something seriously going on with this dude. Is it, people arguing it's probably the car and so on, but, it could be a combination of both of them, car and driver. Because no matter how, difficult they're trying to sell us that the Red Bull is to drive, it's still quick enough that it shouldn't be getting beat by a Kick Sauber. No way, no, how that car should be starting dead last or anywhere within the bottom 5 of the grid. No way, no how. Yeah, that's what he deserves, man. So, yeah.
Wow.
So he was pretty much kind of like the big disappointment again. George Russell, another solid drive from him in that sprint as well. Qualified. I can't remember where he qualified. I think it's 6th or something like that. Qualified. Again, quietly, just doing his thing on notice from people. Yeah, the sprint qualifying was all right. Then we went into the race. I mean, I don't think there was really any that big of a surprise in the race.
Hold on, we're not even at the race yet. We're at the race yet. So Ferrari, we got to mention Ferrari as well, man. We got to mention Ferrari, and you did touch on it. Lewis Hamilton on pole, which was there was certain things that led to that pole, as you just mentioned. Right?
Mm-hmm.
McLaren's actually cocking it up, basically.
Again,
right? So got to be in it to win it. Got to be in it to win it, and I'm sure no one thought Lewis was going to win, even if it's a sprint in his second outing in a Ferrari.
I mean, no one even thought he would be on pole. So that's where the surprise really came from. So the same one lap, bam, that was kind of like vintage Lewis of old. When he has the tools and his head is in the game, he's going to deliver when it matters the most. So, vintage Lewis, let's say in qualifying.
Yeah, you got to give it to the guy. He did fire shots at his doubters, the ones who be yapping.
I mean, you can't blame him. Can you blame him though?
This man has done so much in this sport, and there's still people that is trying to question what he does, man. That's crazy to me.
Look, man, I've said it many a times, man. Lewis, they'll always try and remind Lewis of his place, no matter how successful he is in this sport. They'll always remind him, don't get too uppity. Know your place, dude. No matter how successful you are, you have to remember we control the narrative. And if we put out there that you're this sort of person or whatnot, even if your fans don't believe it, we'll put enough information out there to have everybody believe what we want them to believe.
Well, it's good that people are going away from alternative media.
Yeah, and I think this is where the lack of diversity...
People are seeking alternative media, I meant to say. People are going away from conventional
media. And I think this is where the lack of diversity comes into play within the sport itself, because the entire sport is being reported by only one demographic. They dominate the whole aspect of the reporting of the sport. in every metric you look at. It's not like football where, it's a more varied media outlook. You watch any Premier League game and you see the panel. It's a varying panel. Formula One, pretty much the same demographic dominating. But, I'm glad
it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm glad he kind of and I think it's about time
he start addressing these people directly.
Yeah.
Granted, he's been keeping quiet for long enough.
Yeah, granted, he probably shouldn't give them the energy and the attention that they want. But at the same time, he's been around long enough. There's nothing Formula One can do for him anymore. He doesn't need Formula One. Formula One needs him. All of these people who are writing all of these articles and making these comments, they need him because he drives the entire media aspect of the sport. If he tweets or something, it's him. So, yeah, I'm glad he kind of finally addressed it and said what he needed to say. So people like the Martin Brundles of this world can understand that, yeah, I hear you, Martin, but sometimes you need to talk less, man. Just chill. It's not that deep.
Yeah, that's really sprint. There's not really much to go over on the sprint. We saw what happened because at the end of the day, main event is the main qualifying and the main race. So yeah, McLaren picked it up in the big league.
Yeah, I mean they finally got it right. So I guess they learned from the sprint, whatever issues they were having in the race, they addressed that going into qualifying. And what we witnessed in that main qualifying though is a bit concerning. It's what Lando did. And he did exactly what he did in the sprint qualifying. He messed up the lap and he pretty much aborted the lap. He didn't finish. And because of that, rather than starting at the front of the grid, he started a sprint in P6? I think, started a sprint in P6. And again, in the main qualifying yesterday, finished third. I mean, in truth, I don't even think you can even fault him for qualifying third yesterday. We just have to take our hats off to George Russell and he did his thing because no one saw that coming. Absolutely no one. So for him to split the McLarens showed you how much performance he found on that lap. Because he was the closest, the next best car, which was Max. I think Max qualified almost 0.3 off Oscar. So it shows you what a lap George did to even split the two McLarens. Because no one thought that was even possible. But Lando though.
Yeah.
Lando, people have had this conversation about Lando. Really be able to deliver when he's in a tight championship fight. And you have the best car on the grid. Yeah, we get to that. He's in the best car on the grid right now. He shouldn't be getting out qualified by George Russell. Let's be fair. If he gets out qualified, let it be his teammate. But the Mercedes is not up to the standards of that McLaren. So that shouldn't be happening to him. But,
And that's the situation. These are the things that we mention off here when you look at the greats. When they have the car, they consistently delivers.
Yep.
So at that point, we could give you the car.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it over time. When Michael had the car, when Alonso had the car.
Lewis,
Max. When Lewis had the car, when Seb had the car, Max had the car. The greats, when they do, because we know the big part of this whole thing is the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get the car, that's when your skill comes to the fore. That's when you're going to have to deliver with it. Because if you have the car and you cannot deliver, now people are looking at so you're average.
Yeah, but at the same time, we have to be I think in some ways we have to give him some kind of a bit of a leeway. Because again, he's never been in this position before. This is completely foreign to him. So in some ways he's learning as he goes how to put a championship season together. Granted, it's only been 2 races. He's not performed badly in the 2 main races.
Yeah, it's only 2 races, but I'm taking the momentum from last year, right? And the other thing that we see that the greats do is when they have the car, they put their teammate in their place week in, week out.
Well, it depends on the teammate, to be honest.
Right. So that's what I'm saying to you. That am I confident that Lando as the measure on Oscar? I'm still not confident. I'm still not confident.
I think he has the measure. I think Lando is the quicker one of the 2. But
you remember what I said to you last?
It's not by a large margin.
Not by a large large margin. And one of Oscar's weakness, what we used to see was his tire management.
Yeah, and
I think if he fixes that, Lando is in trouble.
Well, I mean,
so at that point, what's going to be probably the downfall of Oscar is he's going to find himself in the position where he's never done it before.
So you say, so if you're saying if Oscar fixes his tire management skills, are you then saying you think he's quicker than Lando over?
I'm saying he's got the potential to be.
Okay.
And when you put him in a dogfight, I think he's going to come out on top compared to Lando.
Based on what?
Based on just the way he races, this conviction, this decision making. When he gets the opportunity, he just go. Lando tend to think a lot and process it. Takes long to process things. And sometimes in racing, you just got this one opportunity, you just got to take it.
Yeah, you have to be instinctive,
Right. Which and Monza last year proved that type of situation with Oscar. Even if it was his teammate, he saw it. He just like, hey, I'm going for it, right? And I think Lando still lacks that.
I don't know. I think it's still a bit early to come to that conclusion, at the start of this season, because
no, but I'm just basing it off what I've seen from Oscar when he's in those situations. Even though he's not been in it a lot, but whenever he's in it, I'm like, yeah, I like the fact that he did that there and then. I like his decision making. I'm still a bit, when it comes down to Lando and his decision making, I'm still a bit like
skeptical.
I'm not sure. I'm still a bit skeptical. I'm like, I'm not sure about you, dude.
Well, again, like I said, this is the season he's going to have to prove everybody wrong or right. You have the equipment, you have the experience now of, somewhat being in a title challenge last year. Granted, he was never going to win the championship last year, but you've got a taste of what it's like to be in that position. Now you start the season, he's one win. He's been on the podium. He's the only guy, him and George are the only two guys who's podium in both races so far this season. So you've got a good start to the season. Let's see how well he builds on that.
Well, let me ask you this. Based on, even though last year, the championship was like a long shot, right? But what I'm looking at is that last year should have been a dress rehearsal for him. So I know it's 2 races in, but coming in a season when your favorite and arguably in the best car, what I wasn't expecting is for him to still be making these mistakes.
Yeah, but what mistakes has he made?
In qualifying.
Okay, did he make a mistake?
Because remember,
in
the problem that he
faced,
but barely, yeah, he aborted in the sprint qualifying too.
Yeah, he aborted it because, again, I guess he saw that his time wasn't going to beat the time that he needed for pole. And he just felt, okay, might as well just abort the lap. Because it wasn't a good lap.
There's still that chink in his armor where he's prone to making a mistake at crunch time. And I think I'm going to see that several times this year.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I still think he's got the talent, right? But he shows flashes. For me, it's too inconsistent. And I think it's going to come down where these guys are going to catch up at some point this season, right? Where it's going to come down to that one lap. I don't think he's going to have that Max 1 lap in him, that Lewis 1 lap in him at crunch time, that Sebastian Vettel 1 lap in him crunch time. I don't think he's got it.
I disagree.
I think of all those guys, he's more prone to make a mistake in that situation.
Yeah, but what mistakes did he make last year? Because if you look at it last year, Oscar made more mistakes than he did. So
Oscar made more mistakes than Lando last year.
Yeah, but what are the
how long has Lando been in F1?
I think he's been here, 7 years? No.
And because for me,
in early 2000. I can't remember when he came in.
What I'm looking at is just more of, I guess, I've seen enough from Lando, whereas I don't think he could string a real championship charge.
Well,
I want to be wrong. Let him prove me wrong, but
like I said, what we saw before was a case of where he didn't have that good of a car, so you can't be really consistent in that regard because the car wasn't good enough for that to have happened. Last year, from Miami onwards, the car started to perform better. Right? Mm-hmm. You'd say it was the best car in the grid from that point onwards. He was never going to win that championship because the points gap that Max had at the time was too big. And then you have to factor in the competitiveness of the Ferrari and at sometimes the Mercedes, who were always going to take points off of him. So that made that task for him even that more difficult. But at the same time, I think he was well competitive and consistent from Miami onwards. I believe I looked at the stats. I think the lowest amount of points he scored was 6. I believe that was in Qatar. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and check the results. But from Miami onwards, he was consistent. He averaged, I think his points average was about 20 points per race. That was his average from that point onwards. So I think, and if you can average 20 points per race, you can win a championship with that. You can win a championship with that.
You could. My whole thing that I'm looking at, right, is just for me, I think last year was his dress rehearsal, and I think I just had high expectations, whereas like coming into this year, I'm not expecting to see you not on the two front rows of the grid. That's just what I'm at.
Yeah, but if you remove the sprint race, he's delivered in the main races. He's on the first two rows. He qualified on pole in Australia. Okay, like I said, George did a hell of a lap to get in front of him. So he was in that position. You know, George just snuck in. He won the first race comfortably, I think, and he finished P2 again. So
if your team had some issues today.
Yeah, he had some issues today, which is the point. So he had some issues today, but he still came home in second, and he still won the first race of the season. So he's in the championship lead because of how he has performed. So already you're seeing the start of something of a bit of consistency from him. You know, because again, he's not, if you remove the sprint race from the whole entire metric, he's still qualifying in the top 3-4 cars.
Top 3-4 cars.
So I think,
and that's the thing. I guess for me, based on what I saw last year and based on the car that they have, I think my expectations are just high, where you need to bang it on pole. Yeah, but put your teammate in his position and be like, I'm the man. Because you got one apiece now.
But at the same time, you're disregarding just how good Oscar Piastri is. If you're saying Lando,
not necessarily say I'm disregarding how he is. I guess it's just based on So I guess we could agree then that Oscar. So based on that argument, so we can agree that Oscar could also be champion this year.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Okay,
he could.
Okay,
because it's not like they have the same car, and
that's my argument that Oscar could be champion.
Yeah, and pace-wise, they're not that. Like I said, I think the performance gap between both of them is probably maybe a tenth and a half, or 2/10. But it could come down to on the day, on that weekend, who has the upper hand. But they're pretty closely matched, because if you see in qualifying, they're pretty much always close to each other, which is what you want, especially from a constructors championship point of view. You want your two drivers to be close together so you can score as maximum points as possible. But again, going back to my, what I was saying earlier, I think with him now having a better car than he did last year, it's now for him to prove everybody, all his doubters, wrong. That he can do it. You included. I can. Yeah, look, I have no dog in this fight, and I said I think he can win the championship if he gets everything right, and that's what his biggest test is going to be. Can he do it consistently for 24 races? Well, call it 26 or 25 because of the sprint, but ignore the sprint. Can he do it consistently over 24 race weekends?
Hey man, you can't ignore the sprint. That's points.
Yeah, I know, but
we've seen people use sprints to win championship, but we ain't gonna go there. So you got.
But in that sprint, they score more points than this sprint. The maximum points you get for this sprint is on 8 points. So let's see.
Because if the championship comes down to 8 points, you could call it a sprint win.
Yeah, it would be a sprint win, because again, the difference between first and second is 7 points.
Yeah, so that's it on McLaren for now. Let's look at Lewis Hamilton coming from, I'll call it a dominant sprint win, would you? And
I'd say
struggling in the main race.
And that's
what happened here. What?
And again, that's the $1 million question when it comes to Ferrari this year so far. We've seen where they've been quick, and then
hold up before you say it's the $1 million question when it comes to Ferrari. Mm-hmm. Wasn't the same thing happening at Mercedes, where it would go from one session to the next, and then by the time you get there, the car's a totally different car?
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, looking at the Ferrari this season so far, they've been quick out the box, you know what I mean, in the practice sessions, and then they make changes to the car, and it has an adverse effect on performance. And it seems to like they don't know what's going on with that. They don't understand the car as yet. They're still trying to understand where is the baseline that they can get to, so they can build from there because, like, he said that there were a couple of issues he wasn't happy with during the sprint race, and they made some changes. There weren't massive changes. He said they made some small, minor changes, but it had a negative effect on his race. I tend to watch races on his onboard, and he ended up complaining he had no rear end. He was complaining of rear lock-in. Sometime at one point he was talking about, he was graining on his front left, which was always going to be the problem at this track. The front left was always going to take a beating, especially when it comes to that left-hander to go on the back straight. It was always going to take a beating. But I don't know whatever they did, it just didn't work. It just didn't work for him. And I think he might be just as confused as everybody else. But at the same time, I did kind of theorize then. I think it was anticipated that the track temperatures were going to be much higher because the sprint race took place roughly around the same time, didn't it? It took place roughly around this.
It was earlier.
It was earlier. Okay.
Yeah, because over here when I watch a sprint race, I think I watched it at 10 p.m. and it's 4 hours later. Because over here the actual main race started at 2 a.m. compared to.
Oh yeah, it was because the qualifying
so 4 hours later.
Qualifying started roughly around the same time as the main race would have started. So it was forecast that the conditions would be hotter today than it was on Saturday. But then track temperatures were lower. It was overcast. The wind direction changed. The wind speed dropped. So could all of that had effect cause
an adverse effect
on it? It's very possible because these cars are so sensitive to all of these changes. 1 degree drop in temperature could throw your balance off massively. So could that have been what affected him? Could it be because also periodically increased the tire pressure by 1 psi? Could that have been what caused the issues as well? We don't know, but what we have seen so far, and we saw it in Australia, they made setup changes and the car got slower. He said the changes they made, he gave up like a 10th in single lap pace because when you look at the data, he should have qualified higher than 5th, if I'm being honest. He left time on the table, especially in the last corner. He lost something like 2/10 just in that final corner alone. So there was space that he could have actually qualified ahead, probably even ahead of Lando, if he had gotten the lap right.
Yeah.
But we saw in the same thing happen in Australia. They made changes and the car got slower. Where did they qualify in Australia? Was it 7th and 8th? I believe they qualified, I can't remember. But again, we've reared its ugly head again this weekend where small changes, boom. Mainly on his side because Charles kind of like struggled somewhat in the sprint, made some changes for qualifying, kind of deviated towards Lewis's setup and found a middle ground. But he looked much better in the race than Lewis did. He was, despite carrying damage.
Which was crazy to me, which was wild.
Yeah, because
that's the thing I was looking at. I'm like, man, this car, that was no small damage.
They said he lost, 30 to 40 points of downforce. When you put that in numbers,
20 to 30.
So when you put that in numbers in terms of performance, you're talking about that could be easily 2 to 3 tenths a lap he was losing. So
it was just slow.
He had no pace. He was complaining probably like after lap 5 that, these are the issues that he was having. He had no pace whatsoever.
Let me ask you this, right? In terms of like these setup changes, because remember we had this conversation in one of your spaces. It's a driver and team decision.
Correct.
But at the same time, you never know he's going to react at that point, to be honest. Because you say when the conditions change and then you're in Parc Fermé, you just got to run what you brung, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, they're not in Parc Fermé when the sprint race is finished. So you can make changes.
After qualifying.
Yeah, after qualifying, you have to race what you bring. You can't make no changes. But again,
does it seem that he's the only one after Saturday of all the top runners? He's the one that went backwards.
Only 2 drivers in the top 6 moved up position, and that was Lando and Charles. Everybody else in the top 6 held position.
No, what I meant, like in terms of pace, because you saw Max had crazy pace at the end, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that was surprising
at least at some point throughout the race, the Red Bull found Lewis just did not find any pace, whether it was on new tires, worn tires.
Well, on new tires, it did find a lot of pace. even though he was still complaining of some balance issues. Because remember, he had the fastest lap of the race. And if you look at it, comparative to Charles and Max, who, when he pitted, he came back out, 20 seconds behind Max? And much further behind Charles. He finished like 1.9 seconds behind Charles. But again, that's a difference.
Our strategy.
That's
all
a
being
difference.
equal, he was a dog.
But the thing is, he was always going to finish P6. Once Max found his pace, I don't know what switched on in that Red Bull.
Yeah, that thing came alive.
He was nowhere, because at one point he was 4.5 seconds behind Lewis, and then you just saw him starting to eat into that time. He was like 6/10, 7/10, a second, and I'm like, okay, where's that pace coming from? He chased down both Mercedes and passed. No, I'm gonna say Mercedes, Ferraris, and passed them on track. So Lewis was always going to finish 6th once you saw that pace from Max. So that pit stop they gave him was pretty much, it was a free stop. They had nothing to lose and they had nothing to gain. He was always going to finish P6. What they were probably banking on, the only thing would have saved him for him to have finished any higher is if there was a safety car, I don't know, maybe after 10 laps running those tires. He had a safety car, because then if that was the case, I don't think anyone would have pitted, because he would have probably been in the window of, I don't know, maybe the McLarens could have pitted, but not, and then they wouldn't have pitted, because then George wouldn't have pitted anyway. George would have stayed out, and the McLarens would have probably come back out in traffic. So the likelihood is the field would have bunched up, and he would have been on the back of Max and Charles and all of them on fresher rubber. But again, would he have had the pace to pass them? We don't know. But overall, as a weekend for Lewis, it was a hit and miss, I'd say. The highlight being the sprint pole and the win, but the race was just terrible, And then to compound it, what happened?
Yeah, we're going to get into that. Yeah, that's the next thing up. Ferrari double disqualification.
The last time 2 teammates got disqualified was Japan 2019, when Hülkenberg and, what's his name?
Grosjean?
No.
What was it?
Ricciardo. Driving for Renault, got disqualified. But the thing is, the Ferrari guys got disqualified for 2 different reasons.
2 different things, yeah.
One got disqualified for
underweight.
One got disqualified for being underweight, and the other one got disqualified for a weird excess
one rear plank.
Because what was it? Was it 0.5 millimeter difference in legality?
Like size of a
credit card. Card, yeah. But at the same time, rules are rules. So they were always going to, once the news broke that they got referred to the stewards for this, yep, they're getting disqualified. And you ask the question, did Charles breaking his front wing saved him from having the same issue Lewis had?
Good question. But the thing that's striking to me, that stood out to me, is that the car was slow.
Well, Lewis's car was slow, not Charles.
No, Lewis's car was slow. No, that's what I'm saying. Lewis's car was slow. And if you're wearing a plank on such a smooth surface, it means the car was running low.
Look,
accurate.
If you're going to if you're getting disqualified, be fast. Don't be slow and get disqualified.
Because at least in Kota, it was super quick.
23, he was quick.
So we could say, okay, so if the car runs low, at least we know it's fast. So but now you're telling me the car's running low and it's slow?
And it's slow.
That's wild.
And this is concerning, because going back to Australia, one of the reports was they had to raise the car because they were concerned about plank wear, right? Now, Australia was one of the smoothest tracks on the circuit calendar. This Chinese track here in China was brand new resurfaced track.
Yep.
And you have that problem. So imagine when you get to a bumpy track somewhere like Kota. What's gonna happen to you then?
It's kind of off topic. You know why Kota is bumpy, right?
Yeah, it's about probably the bumpiest track on the calendar.
But you know why it is bumpy?
Yeah, because the land drops something. I think they say something like 3 to 4 centimeters per year. It drops.
Living in Texas, I've experienced it. So in Texas, most houses got foundation issues. So like in summertime, we have to have like a sprinkler around our foundations.
Why?
Because it's mostly clay. So when it gets, you remember like on like back home on the playing field when summertime you usually have these huge craters in the ground.
Yeah, cracks. Yeah,
these pockets. Yeah, it's the same thing with
the foundation,
the land, the soil in Texas.
Yeah,
because my son lost his iPhone in one of them on a playing field. Never found it back. Dropped through and that thing like it went to hell. So
because is it not like a swampland the track was built on or something like that?
I know it's dumped, so they had to build up. They had to put a lot of dirt to dump it and build it up and pack it up. But the thing is, even if it wasn't for that, Texas is just known for that, right?
Yeah.
Texas probably got the most foundation issues.
Yeah, because of the weather, it gets
and
dry.
No matter what they do to Kota, no matter how they resurface it, it's going to come right back to that.
Yeah, because the line...
So we just call it the characteristics of the track. So you just got to learn how to drive it and learn how to ride it. It's what it is.
So if they're experiencing that problem, right, on smooth tracks, I dread to think what's going to happen when they get to a bumpy. And again, the performance of these cars come from how low you can run them to the ground.
You're going to have to run that thing.
And if you have to jack it up, you're going to lose performance.
They're going to have to run that thing like an off-roader, like a Dakar.
And if that's the case, they're not going to
rally. That's how they're going to have to run that like a Rapture.
Yeah, and if that's the case, they're not going to be anywhere in the pecking order. But again, it's still early stage. It's only 2 races. As a Lewis fan, I hope that they get to the bottom of what the issues are and they can find the performance in that car, because right now they're behind. Of the top 4 teams, I think they're the 4th fastest, easily the 4th fastest, based on the performance we've seen so far. Because the only time a Ferrari has finished ahead of a Red Bull, Mercedes, or a McLaren was a sprint race yesterday. The lead of the leading cars. So the leading cars within those 3 teams. So the leading car in Australia was Lando. The leading car, so you see what I mean? So they've pretty much been finishing where they're supposed to be finishing in the pecking order, in the top 4 as the 4th fastest team.
Except for that Lewis performance yesterday in the
Exactly.
sprint.
So, going forward, this needs to be resolved. And again, my then question then becomes, if they fail to deliver this year, does that put Fred Vasseur's position in jeopardy?
I don't think it should.
Why not?
Because Ferrari's also proven that the switching team principles still don't get you nothing. So you might as well just keep some consistency. So
but this is what, year 3 for him, right?
Maybe in a team like Ferrari, it needs like 6 years.
6 years.
Because ultimately, they're going to go back right to where probably worse than because guess what? Someone may come in and try to change the whole philosophy, and then they just go back to where, like, it's never going to solve anything, man. Changing team principles because how many team principles have they changed in how many years?
Since they last won the championship with Dominicali in 2008, they've had...
you don't really have to give me a number. It's a lot.
I'm trying to call. I'm going to call the names because that's how I remember them. You have, after Dominicali, you have the likes of Arrivabene, Binotto, Mattiacci, but he didn't last long. I think he just came in to get rid of clean house in 2014-15. And now I think probably 4 or 5 they've had since the last won a championship. I'd say 4.
And what is it? And what has that done for them?
Well, it hasn't really done anything, but if you look at the previous ones, if you look at Binotto and you look at Arrivabene, as badly as, even though they've not won anything, they were able to produce cars that could compete for a championship.
Yeah, you're right. Is it even different from now? Because ultimately, this Ferrari team, they competed somewhat. They just went into a lull, which is just the same old Ferrari.
Compete because again, last year they should have won the Constructors' Championship, but we saw what always happens to them. They get to a stage where there's a massive dip in performance.
So based on that, you would agree that then Fred Vasseur has come really the closest?
No, who was
in terms of constructors? Yeah. Because even when Seb was driving for them,
but they finished P2 in the constructors. Ferrari has finished P2 in the constructors before.
But I don't think changing. Yeah, my numbers are probably, but I don't think changing Fred Vasseur is going to solve Ferrari's problem.
I don't think it. I agree. I don't think it will.
Consistency. I think he needs to stay where he's at, and they just need to keep building. Because ultimately, changing him not going to solve their issue.
And I agree, because again, Ferrari's problem is just that. It's Ferrari. They just always seem to find a way to not get things right. when you think they should. And and this is what we had the conversation early in the space. We're talking about when I said Ferrari needs to win a championship. People are saying no, they don't. I said they do, because again, their ethos they were built on the back of racing. You know what I mean? They're the most successful team.
Turning in his grave.
Of course.
Facts.
Enzo looking at that right now from his grave and like, yo, this is not acceptable. And like I said to you, this is the longest, this is the second longest, I believe this is the second longest drought they've had in their entire history, because the last, prior to Schumacher joining 96, the Constructors' Championship, they won the Constructors in 83. The last time they won a Drivers' Championship prior to, I was correct, prior to Schumacher in 2000 was Jody Scheckter in 79.
Hold on, let me ask you this. Let's go back to this is why I don't want him to change in Fred Vasseur, and I think Ferrari need to at least build for another 2 or 3 years. Even though Lewis was signed by the big dog, right? The problem with that, if they remove Fred, because Fred and Lewis has a relationship, right?
Yeah, going back to GP2 days.
So I don't think that relationship is forced. Fred was probably happy to have Lewis as well. Problem is if you change him and they bring in someone else who thinks that, well, I want to rebuild and I don't want Lewis Hamilton to be a part of this, it's going to create a conflict between the big dogs and the new team principal. That ain't going to get you nowhere.
Yeah, but at some point, that question will need to be asked.
But not now, because ultimately, Lewis ain't settled yet, right?
No, I'm not saying that if anything, he'd be replaced right away. But at some point, if he fails to deliver them a championship, the question will be asked. Is he the man? Because again, this is year 3 for him. And don't think we've seen any progress from Ferrari in that 3-year period. They're no better off now than they were in, right? So if they fail to deliver a championship or even mount a championship challenge this year, they're banking on going into 2026, where it's a completely new set of regulations.
May I ask you this question?
Mm-hmm.
How long has Zach Brown been with McLaren?
Oh God.
Exactly.
I don't. Yeah, but the problem is, the difference with that is, okay, I get where you're coming from, but like I said, but listen, but what I'm trying to say to you is, this is year 3 for Fred, right? And if they fail to deliver, even mount a challenge, then you're banking on he has to get it right next year.
Yeah,
because if he goes into next year and they don't get it right and they massively underperform, how much longer are you going to? Because again, we've seen how long it takes to claw back a team that's gained an advantage at the start of a new regulation.
And I agree, but what I'm saying to you, the reason why I brought up Zach Brown, right, is you saw they just started competing last year.
Yes, but again,
and that's why I asked you, how long has he been?
The difference here is, I think the difference with the Zach Brown and, McLaren sort of situation. McLaren went through a phase where they had a lot of issues, because you're talking about a team that could have gone bankrupt. You see what I mean? So McLaren had a lot of issues in the background that they had to deal with. They had the infighting with the ownership groups. You know what I mean? Where they had to clean house. They had to get rid of Ron Dennis, Martin Whitmarsh, and all. There's a lot of things,
right?
Yeah. So I think the dynamic is different.
Ultimately, it's all about building, and no matter what the factors are, you have to find some form of consistency and build, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if McLaren had gotten rid of Zach Brown for whatever reason and changed the whole setup, I don't think they would have been here today.
Yeah, but McLaren weren't going to get rid of Zach Brown because, if I'm not mistaken, Zach has some form of shares within the company.
No, remove that. I'm just talking about share as a team, as his position where he's at, right? Yeah. McLaren is a perfect example of say, hey man, chopping and changing team principles every 2-3 years is not going to fix your issue.
And I agree with that.
To find some form of consistency, find someone who can actually, because the thing is, the first thing is create a workforce that could work together and their chemistry is in sync. Once you find that, then you start putting the Lego bricks in play. Yeah. It could be a 6-year thing, right?
And I completely agree with that. But at the same time, we go into 2026 and they've fallen behind again, everybody, and now have to play catch up. Fred's position will become unattainable at that team.
True, because I could keep this and not say it, but I'm also seeing where you're coming from, because the thing that you haven't mentioned is the difference between the two is that McLaren has always been on an upward trend. That's the difference.
Yep.
So year on year, they build. Now they're here. I think the difference with Ferrari is that it's peaks and troughs. So they're not on this upward, consistent trend. Whereas like, okay, we went from this, we did this is what we put in place. It's going to get us here. Now we're here. We won the constructors last year. Now we're trying to go for both. So I think that's where the difference is. So I could see where you're coming from. But Ferrari needs to find that.
And not only that, let me just say this last point. They started the 22 regs as probably the closest competitor to Red Bull. And based on that, you'd think if anybody was going to challenge Red Bull or dethrone Red Bull, it was going to be Ferrari. No one saw McLaren coming. No one saw McLaren because Mercedes pretty much, they shit the bed. They were pretty much, once they started 22, or they did, and all the problems they found, and then they went into 23 with the same sort of problems, etc., no one really gave them a shot of actually dethroning Red Bull. So McLaren came out of nowhere. So Ferrari was the one we'd expect to do that. So Ferrari is pretty much kind of like they've regressed. They've not progressed. And I don't care what people need. I don't care what anybody says. If you look, they've regressed. They've not progressed.
You know what this reminds me of? What team, the old Ferrari situation and being close to Red Bull and then got jumped by McLaren?
What's that?
Arsenal. Because I was thinking the same thing. Let's jump over. I was thinking the same thing when I looked at Man City not doing well. I think Arsenal should have been the next one up. Now Liverpool, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So you're telling me you ran so close for two, and then now when they faltered,
you're not there to pick up the pieces.
Crazy. So it's the same type of situation.
It's like that's what they call Arsenal is like a Netflix series. Wait for next season, and that's exactly what Ferrari is right now. Ferrari is like a Netflix series. Wait for next season. How much longer are you gonna keep waiting? Because again, this is the argument I was trying to make in the space today. As the team that's been here for the entire 75-year history of the sport, going 2008, last constructors champion. So that's what? 17 years. 2007, the last drivers champion, 18 years. So you're going 18 years without winning a championship. That's not acceptable for an organization like Ferrari.
Ferrari's in the worst three franchises. So you're talking about the worst three sports franchises when it comes down to those things: Arsenal, Ferrari, Dallas Cowboys.
I can think of worse franchises that,
No, I mean in terms of franchises that have won stuff and it's just there. It's just like, okay, I'm the name, but I haven't done anything in a while.
Because Ferrari knows. They know whether they win or not, money will always be made. Because again, the brand it's brand power. The Ferrari brand is one of the best. But at the same time, you still need to win. You're Ferrari, for heaven's sake. Your heritage is built on racing and winning things. You entered Le Mans the first year and won back-to-back Le Mans championship. You won more Le Mans championship than you've won F1 titles in the last whatever. Granted, it's probably easy. Yeah.
I was gonna say this in your spaces earlier on. Even though they did that in Le Mans, I didn't realize that after Ford kicked their asses in back in the day in Le Mans, I didn't realize that when Ford bought back the new GT, they kicked their asses again.
Where?
In Le Mans. So the last, not in the hypercar.
In the GTs.
Yeah, when Ford bought back the GT recently, a couple years ago, they bust up Ferrari again and then left again. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
But look, you know my theory as to why Ferrari not winning in Formula 1.
Yeah, we said it on one of the pod. We ain't gonna repeat that again. Let them go listen to that one if they want to hear what that is. Y'all want to hear his theory on why and Ferrari's Achilles heel? You got to go listen. I think a couple episodes ago. But
there's a reason why I think that. And until they do, what's it something about Caucasian whatever. Never mind. I'm just rambling now. But
yeah.
Ferrari needs to win a championship, and if Fred doesn't deliver, because again, everything's been put in place for them to succeed. You have the drivers now. You've done the recruitment. You have all the resources available to you. Put it to use. If you don't win a championship, if you don't compete for a championship this year, and you go into 2026 and you fall behind, and you don't get a jump start on everybody, and you're not Fred, I'm sorry, man. questions will need to be asked of you.
Get
your act together, mate.
It's. I don't think the back of the grid is over. You shouldn't be at the back of the grid.
It doesn't look bad. It is bad, bro. It's terrible.
Yeah.
18th,
I was just trying to say. I was just trying to,
Listen to the numbers, bro. 18th,
in a Red Bull.
20th in a Red Bull.
Even that Red Bull were struggles when they weren't winning for years. They wasn't back there.
Man, when they just came in the sport in 05, when they took over Jaguar in 05, they weren't qualifying like this. And again, people are trying to make the argument that it's the car, it's difficult to drive, etc., etc. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Even as difficult as it supposedly is to drive, you're not supposed to be getting beat by a Kick Sauber. Customer team at that. No, I'm lying. They're not the customer team. They're Ferrari power units. My bad. You're not supposed to be getting beat by a Kick Sauber. There should be enough pace, inherent pace in that Red Bull to at least get you into Q.
I cannot argue that.
And since then, since the race is finished earlier today, there's no reports coming out that they could replace him in Japan. And Red Bull aren't denying those rumors.
That's wild.
2 races.
So let me ask you this. I know with everything that you do, if you prepare in the gym to go do outdoor stuff, there's a chance you're going to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm segueing to something when I said that, right? Because when I was joining the British military, I trained a lot in Brixton Rec, man. And when I got to that thing outdoors in the winter,
it's a different sort of.
All that thing went through the window. I'm like, man, this is crazy. So I'm segueing to this with Liam Lawson, right? Is that I'm thinking, what were they seeing on the simulator? Weren't they seeing because the simulator was supposed to be the closest thing you could get to real life, right?
Forget the simulator, bro. They had 11 races. They saw what is data against Yuki in the V-Carb last year. They have that information available to them. And someone pointed out to me, when we were doing the space earlier, my guy TK, that if you look at his record, it's nothing to be marveled over.
In terms of
his
lower categories.
It's nothing to be marveled over. So what made them make that decision to pick him over Yuki Tsunoda? Because Helmut Marko came out after they made the decision and said, look, Yuki is quick. They can see that Yuki is quick. But it's not just quickness they're looking for. They're looking for, I don't know what else they're looking for, because that don't make no sense to me. You want somebody who's quick, right? In the car. So if Yuki is quick and you think Yuki can deliver, whatever the other things you're looking at, surely you can work on those. If you're talking about his temperament, his attitude, whatever it is, aren't those things that you can work on separately? What was it that made them decide Lawson? Well, I kind of have an idea, but I'm not going to say it on the pod. I'll say it on my X feed. You guys can follow me on Thanos. That's a 7, HONOS 876. Or wherever you see a fire, that's me starting fires. But the point is, and if they're going to replace him, if they replace him in Japan, that's not only embarrassing for him, it's also embarrassing for the organization, because it's going to prove that you got the decision wrong from the jump when you had the right person in place.
My take on it is that I like Yuki enough for him not to get that seat.
You know what? I'm not even disagreeing with that at this point. I'm not because, and here's why I don't disagree, because it's the ultimate disrespect to Yuki. Because they brought in, when they got rid of De Vries, was it De Vries they got rid of, and they brought in Ricciardo. So Ricciardo? I can't remember who they brought in. But when they brought Ricciardo in, right? Talk was Ricciardo was there so the team, Red Bull, can evaluate how his performance so they can bring him in to replace Perez for this year. Yuki sent Ricciardo to the glue farm. He destroyed him. They brought Lawson in.
Or sent Ricciardo to make wine.
They sent that to a glue farm and whatever. Wine, whatever. Glue farm he's gone to. They brought Lawson in with the same thinking. Yuki destroyed him, right? But what they're arguing is, well, he was somewhat close to Yuki in terms of performance. And when you factor in that he's only done 6 races, that means he's done really well. That means his upside is much better than Yuki. But at the end of the day, Yuki beat him. You wanted to evaluate him to see how he could beat, and he didn't. And you overlook him for Yuki. Yuki's been in the Red Bull program for God he knows how long. I think he was part of the junior program, came through F2 into, I don't even know what they call themselves. They change their name so friggin' much, I don't even know what to call him anymore, right? And you've all passed him over for Liam Lawson, who is now stinking up. And to make it worse, Yuki is out-qualifying him. That's out-qualified him every race this year. He's even been out-qualified by Ajar. He got out-qualified by, what did Helmut Marko call Bortoletto, a C-rated driver?
Rated driver. That's disrespectful.
Come on. It's very likely that Lawson could have... Lawson started dead last. Where he finished? 17th? Be real. Come on. So all this rumors now about him possibly getting replaced, we kind of said he was probably going to get replaced about halfway through the season. But if it happens after 2 races, I don't think his career will ever recover from that.
And that's the thing, right? That Red Bull second seat is like a graveyard, right? Which is why, as I said at the top, I like Yuki enough for him not to get that seat.
Yeah, but Yuki's not going to turn it down.
Because, obviously he's not. Because for me, I'm already looking at what type of support are you going to give Yuki? Consider that you didn't want to give him the seat in the first place. So it looks like you're going to have to give it to him by default now.
I mean, he got a test by default last year in Abu Dhabi. The only reason he got to test the car was because I think it was Honda put in a good word and he got to test it.
Yeah, so that's me. So when you talk about I'm taking a win not because I want it, but because I have to, it means that you don't get the same type of love.
Yeah, I agree with you. If I'm Yuki, I'm politely declining that offer. Like, I'm good over here. Because you didn't think I was good enough then. Why now, when the guy that I've actually spanked come in and embarrassed himself, think, it's like you pass up this girl you've been chatting to for your whole life, and some new pretty chick turn up and you pass her up for this new pretty chick, and then you go over and realize, this pretty chick ain't it. But you want to draw back for your old girl, and she's like, no,
I'm straight.
Exactly. She's gonna come back and like, I'm straight. Go back over there.
I'm good over here.
Yeah, I'm good over here.
It's a bad look for Liam, and despite he got the seat and despite how it happened, every driver, right? When you see what these guys go through to get to F1 and sacrifice. Because I think he said his parents had to sell their house to bring him to Europe. When you look at the backstory, and I'm quite sure probably Yuki people had to sacrifice stuff, but it's just that you never want to see a driver get to this point after putting in all that work and it just goes to nothing.
Yeah,
right.
I agree with that.
I'm sure it'll be okay because I'm sure even if he leaves Formula 1, he's probably going to be able to race like in endurance or GT race. He's always going to be able to
in the car or somewhere. He's going to land on his feet somewhere else.
Land somewhere because he was a Formula. He's going to be a hot tick.
But I think if he gets replaced in Japan like they're reporting, then his F1 career is done.
I don't think they should. The thing is just because of who they are. Replacing him, that's the third race?
Yeah, that'll be race 3.
Yeah, that's despite what I wouldn't. That's not something that I would. And
it's a triple header. The next 3 races is a triple header as well.
Yeah, because you got to remember, if it's like what everyone spoke about, right? Some is driver, maybe characteristics of the car, and if the car needs to be driven in a special way, it's probably going to take an okay driver to get up to speed, right? And it's just unfortunate that sometime in F1 you don't get that time. Right, you don't get it.
But it's the Max Verstappen poisons and chalice, isn't it? Max is so good that it makes these guys look like, they're nothing. Okay, I don't really rate Liam Lawson, but is he a terrible driver? No, I don't think he's a terrible driver.
I don't think he's a terrible driver. I think he needs more time. I think, for me, replacing him at the 3rd race after Australia wasn't really a true reflection. And then I think he needs...
But if you listen to Ted's question to Christian Horner yesterday, which he did, you could see he wanted, when Ted asked him, the look on his face was like he was thinking, P-R-I-C-K.
Why would you ask me that in public?
Yeah, I mean, because Ted pretty much says, you paid off Perez a lot of money. This is not what you paid him off for, basically. Because he's like saying, you give Perez all that money to leave, you bring this in, he's worse than what Perez was doing. Surely that's not what you intended.
Ted is gonna keep this up to the lobby for him to lose his job.
I mean, they did lobby. Remember at one point, I think Ted lost his job with Sky Sports F1 because there was a point he was missing for a lot of races And people were asking, where's Ted? Where's Ted? Where's Ted? And then eventually he turned back up. And I think this was around the time he was asking the questions about AD21. You know, Ted's not
Probably
letting up on that. And so
Probably Ted turned back with that NDA.
I mean, he's still going at them for it. He's not letting up. And like I said, when it comes to that, Ted will ask the tough questions, and I'm like, never change Ted. But
but to move on, let's wrap up the Liam Lawson. I don't think replace him at the third race would be a good thing.
I don't think. I think a proper evaluation. Give him until maybe the summer break.
That's what I was looking at too.
Yeah.
So at that point, he's gonna get a feel for the car. They may bring up dates. So I think that would just be too harsh.
If you give him up to the summer break, and if you see there's no change in performance or anything like that, then at that point you're gonna go, we're probably gonna have to make the change, because again, you did it with who did they replace when they brought Max in? Who did they replace?
Kvyat.
Was it Kvyat?
I think it was Kvyat.
Or was it Gasly?
Was it Gasly?
I can't even remember. One of them, whoever they replaced in 2016. I can't remember who they replaced him with. But they're probably gonna have to make the swap. But again, because Yuki has a problem for next year. Yuki doesn't have a contract for next year. So this year for him, it's kind of like he's putting himself in the shop window. Do you want to go in Red Bull and then you find out that you perform as badly as Lawson, which I don't think he will.
It was Kvyat. Yeah.
So as Yuki, do you want to put yourself in that position? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a Red Bull seat. Why wouldn't you want to take it? But at the same time, you're looking at like the toxicity that comes with that seat.
That could go both ways. It could go, whereas like if they're forced to give him the seat by default, we probably get to see why they didn't want to give him the seat in the first place.
True.
Right. So
and we could also see why they were wrong not to give him the seat in the first place.
Yeah, so ultimately, let's see if he gets offered the seat. It would be crazy not to take it, because at the end of the day, it's a championship winning team seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, you just got to be like, hey, and just show his talent.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. I wish Liam Lawson all the best. I never want to see a driver that's. It's a brutal sport, right?
Do you want to wish a man who basically came out when I think it was Perez was struggling last year, and he said something like, well, "There's no room for sympathy or something like this in this sport." You really want to wish that sort of person the best? Because he didn't seem too sympathetic towards Perez's struggle last year, was he?
Yeah, but ultimately that's on him though. It doesn't change who I am as a person and how I view things. He could be the most horrible person in the world. That's on him. That's for him to live with.
Yeah.
It wasn't either one that was saying, well, McLaren isn't a British team and all this craziness, right? So ultimately, that's on him. That's for him to live with. I'm cool. I'm just like, okay, if not for you, it's for your parents who had to sell their house to get you where you're at now, right?
I think he already bought the house back anyway. So
yeah, so ultimately, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not gonna let, based on his views or what he says, change the fact that I'm like, all right, man, you here? Think you really deserve a fair shot? Hey, if his words comes back to haunt him, that's for him to live with, not me. You know what I'm saying?
You better align it.
Yeah, so that's for him to live with. Where we had our next thing up. We have you kind of touched on it. George Russell's unnoticed start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, George is doing his thing quietly at that as well. He's qualifying well. He's racing well. He's not making any mistakes. He's quietly showing Mercedes that he can step up to the plate to be the new team leader now that Lewis has left. And this is why I say you kind of have to take your hat off to him, because he's getting the job done. He's finished 2 podium places to start the season. It's his best. I believe it's his best start to a season ever. You know what I mean?
Well,
the lap he did yesterday, the split the McLarens, no one saw that coming. And it now leads to ask the question, is Charles really the fastest driver over 1 lap on the grid? Because I think if give George the equipment, George could challenge that argument easily.
He's showing that now, right?
Yeah, he could easily challenge it. Mercedes are quietly doing their thing as well, because that's what they've scored points in all the races. Could be wrong. I don't believe Kimi scored points in the sprint yesterday, but I'd have to check that up.
I don't think he did.
But at the same time, Mercedes are quietly just getting on, doing their own little thing, gathering the points because they're second in the championship. They're second in the championship now, and they're not there by luck. They're there based on actual performance.
Yeah.
Let me see the sprint. Kimi scored points in the sprint. He finished 7th behind Tsunoda. So Mercedes has scored points in every race so far this season. George is what? I believe George is 2 points behind, what's his name? Max?
He's a point behind Max.
Point behind Max.
Yeah.
Who is what? So he's 8 points off the lead for the championship. A point behind Max.
9. He's 9 off. Yeah, because Lando's on 44 compared to George 35.
35. Okay, 9.
Piastri's on 34.
34. Someone else.
Kimi Antonelli's sitting 5th.
On what?
In the standings.
How much is he on?
He's on 22 points.
There you go.
Followed by Albon. You want to know who's in 7th in the championship? You would never guessed it.
I think I know. It's
You get it wrong. You're gonna get it wrong.
Ocon. No, nope. Lance Stroll.
Yeah, Lance Stroll. Stroll is sitting 7th. I'm like, what?
You see, Lance Stroll getting the points because we get to his teammate next. But again,
his teammate is on 3 eggs. Egg.
He's yet to be a classified finisher in a race. Well, except probably the sprint. I think he was classified as a finisher. But in the main races, he's yet to be classified as a finisher. He finished 10th in the sprint race. Yes,
there's mitigating circumstances to that.
Mitigating or none. I mean, he crashed out like a rookie in Australia when he was in the points. So, what's the mitigating circumstances for that? So there's only one race where there's a mitigating circumstance, and that was today, where he had, vanilla chirps like a bird. He had a rear brake fire. That's what took him out of the race today. But Alonso ain't doing the business. Lance Stroll is doing the business.
Yeah, he's doing his thing because I guess he knows he's under fire.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's still going to be in the team next year. Aston, we kind of segue from the Mercedes, but I think we've pretty much covered Mercedes. George and them lot doing the thing. Hats off to them. You know me, I'm a Mercedes fan as well as a Lewis fan. So I'm keeping my eye on Mercedes because I want him to succeed the same way I want Lewis to succeed. Plus, I like, once Lewis decides he wants to step away from this sport, Kimi Antonelli is going to be, who I'm keeping an eye on because I think there's something very special about this kid. Because if you look at the race today, he was running Max close for a bit until he picked up that damage, which they say cost him around 4/10 per lap. But prior to that, he was basically there. He was sticking with Max for a large part of the race. I'll look up that in a second and I'll probably get back to you on that. But Alonso, though, the Aston Martin thing, I said to you before, I think Aston Martin needs to get rid of both of the drivers, but they're not going to do it. Alonso is likely going to be there next year, which I think is just, to me, it doesn't scream that you're a serious organization if you still believe Alonso is the man you should be having in your team. I posted a tweet yesterday where I did the stats, looked up the stats for these current regs from 22 onwards. Because the media, they question Lewis's ability, they question why would Ferrari sign Lewis, someone who got beat by George last year, etc., etc. All of these things, he's old, he's this and that. But you look at the numbers, Lewis has 2 main race wins, a sprint win. He has 2 poles, one of which being a sprint pole. He has 20 podiums to his name, right? You look at Alonso's record from 2022 until now, he just has 8 podiums, which he picked up in 2023.
They're going to say if it was Alonso in the Mercedes, he would have won a championship.
Yeah, it's delusional. That's coming from his delusional fan base.
I'm not gonna, everyone's got their fans. Everyone got psycho fans. So it is what it is. Everyone is gonna stand in the corner of their driver, right? So
yeah,
I expect nothing less.
Yeah, that aside, I can
because ultimately, the numbers are gonna speak for themselves, right? So the numbers are gonna speak for themselves. So it doesn't matter what any fans say, how the media try to twist it. It doesn't matter. The numbers are gonna be there for you to go research.
Yeah, but the number has always been there, but the media won't acknowledge the fact that, maybe it's time Alonso to move on. Bring someone else in.
Ultimately, if the organization who's spending all these millions of dollars don't see that, well, I'm blind.
Yeah. Because, again, you're not going to win a championship with Alonso.
Right, so, that's for them.
What's the point holding on to that?
I don't know what their motivation is behind that.
You're investing all of this money into the team. Move on. Bring someone else in, because, again, like my argument has always been, Alonso is a short-term solution to a long-term goal.
But also, my philosophy is also that when you're building, you always need an experienced driver along with a younger charger, right?
Yeah, but at the same time,
Alonso's the guy to develop the Aston Martin? Probably not.
He is not the guy, because they've gone backwards.
Yeah, I don't. The motivation, I don't know. To be honest, I do not know. And sometimes
since 2023, from Canada 2023 onwards, they've gone backwards.
Yeah, and at some point, you just as a driver, you just need to know like when to just
call it a day, move on.
Like if you, because the thing is, you could be motivated, but if they stop watching and saying it, bro, you just need to call it a day.
Yeah, like Jamie Carragher said about in football, leave football before football leaves you. So leave Formula 1 before Formula 1 leaves you, Alonso. You need to go to that glue farm, mate. It's time to move on. Leave, go. You're not this.
Bro, why you like that? Bro? You do know I want everyone to listen to this podcast, right?
Please, his fans will still listen because they hate me that much. They'll just listen just to hear me rant. You know what I mean? He hasn't won a race since 2013. He hasn't won a championship since 2006. 2006, George W. Bush Jr. was the president.
You know what's
2011, crazy? Barack Obama, 2013, not 2011, 2013, he last won a race.
You know what's crazy?
That was, who was going in office in 2013? Was that what? Trump.
You dislike Alonso so much. He's not even on our topics, but...
Yeah, he is on our topic. Because we have him down as Alonso is yet to be classified. So he's on our topic.
Oh yeah, he's at the bottom. Why do you have to put him at the bottom though?
Because he hasn't...
Call him a rookie last year, then you put him at the bottom of the list this
because
this week?
Again, if you haven't been classified in the races yet, you're basically at the bottom. He's not. If you look at the actual official standings, he's not even on the list. He's not there because he hasn't he's yet to be classified as a finisher in any of the race. Look, I'm literally looking at it. They don't even have 20th on the list. He's the 20th driver. He's not been classified in a single. That's probably the worst start in Alonso's career. And he drove for Minardi.
Yeah, that's it on Alonso. Because I know if I follow you, bro, you go like a whole hour beating Alonso. So I'm just gonna divert away from that because your dislike for that guy is wild.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
2007 will forever
double
live
point
in
score
infamy.
Double point score for Haas.
Yeah, Haas, who's Haas? You know what I mean? I think Beerman finally scored his first points. He scored his first points of the season as well. Ocon, 10 points. Again, his first point scorer in race of the season.
That overtake was wild.
Which one?
Ocon.
On who? I can't remember.
When
the race.
Who was it on? Man, I'm drawing a blank. Who was it on? And I had 2 wheels off the track on the grass. It was wild.
It was Kimi.
I can't remember what it was on.
It was Kimi.
It was on Kimi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a wild overtake, bro. Yeah, boy, he kept his foot planted. I'm like, ooh, kudos to you. Kudos to you on that one.
That's Ala Seb in Spain. I think it was 2018 against Bottas.
And
remember that switcheroo?
Yeah, and that's when I talk about that instinctiveness and that conviction to just make the decision. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
but Lando did. Lando, I know obviously you're referring to Lando, going back to Lando, but that's what Lando did against George going into turn 1.
In this race?
Yeah. How do you think he passed George going into turn 1?
I still need more convincing.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but congrats to Haas and Haas for scoring their first double points of the season.
I mean, the only team yet to score a point is Alpine.
And kudos to Kudos to Isaac Ajar. He got it out of his system. He finished the race.
Yep, but missed out on the points. I think
kudos to Berman as well. After what happened at his opening Grand Prix, he figured it out too. So I'm happy that these guys actually got a full race out of their system, whether they're in the points or not.
I think all the rookies.
Yeah. So that's a good. They got after, because as I said, last week was just rough, right? And for them to come here, put it together, Behrman in the points, it's a good look for them, and I'm happy for them. Ajar, got that one out of his system too, because I want to see these young guys actually do well. So kudos to them, congrats to them.
And just to point it out to you, Alpine did score a point with Gasly, but he got disqualified.
Shit's crazy.
Because he was underweight, so he got disqualified. So back to the drawing board for Alpine, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, let's see. But yeah, you say you want to get to rating the race? Could you give it out of a 10 piece?
What did I give Australia?
I think you gave it like a 3 point something. It was a low score, right? Super low score.
Yeah, I'd probably give this one the same. This wasn't really all that exciting, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'll probably give it a 5.5.
I was watching it. I'm like, man, this is going to be hard to make a pot off of.
Yeah, there wasn't much going on. There wasn't really much going on.
You're like, man.
And we didn't even talk about the fact that, some of the commentary, because I don't know who you watch F1 TV?
Yeah, we get the F1 TV feed, so, and we have ESPN, so we get the same thing that you hear Crofty and them.
Yeah, because listening to Croft, Charles nearly took out Lewis at the start of the race. Croft is in commentary saying Lewis hit Charles, and I'm like, you're going to hit somebody when you actually be in front of them.
And that's just first lap shenanigans, bro.
Yeah, obviously. They weren't going to
first lap shenanigans. I don't even know why they try to make a conversation out of that. That's just first lap shenanigans. That could have gone either way. Fred
wasn't too happy post-race with some of the FOM broadcast, because the radio message to make it sound like, they instructed Lewis to swap position when it was actually Lewis who suggested, let's swap position because I'm really slow. So let's just move out the way. But the way it's been reported, it's like, I've seen a certain dirty rag publication over here, writing a headline that Lewis falls out with his engineer, and when he was told to swap, I'm like, yo.
Yeah, that's foolishness. The thing that I like with people like Fred is that when you deal with the people like the Italians, the French, they'll tell you what it is, bro. But sometimes the British media can be too political. They like to play the little political game, and they don't want to call a spade a spade. Right?
Fred is less PC.
Yeah, which is why a lot of time you get in the media, the British bias in commentary, right? They like to toe this political line too much rather than to call a spade a spade. Right? And it depends on what driver they're appeasing to on that weekend. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. Which is why conventional media is getting the beating that it is getting now, because people are just sick and tired of that. So, You said you give the race a what?
I'd probably give it a 5.5.
5.5.
I need to see more. Race gets 5.5. The sprint gets 5.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the sprint a 5, and I'm gonna give the race a 3 3/4.
Jesus.
Reason being, I'm in a different time zone, and I had to stay up. My son also stayed up. He fell asleep in the end, and I'm like, man, it was worth me staying up. So I'm a bit mad that I stayed up for that.
Bro, I slept.
I could have watched that. I could have watched highlights of that race. But hey, at the end of the day, if you're running a pod, you gotta be gotta watch it live to know what's up.
I slept on the sofa from Thursday night. I slept on the sofa Thursday, Friday, Saturday to watch so I can watch this thing. Yeah.
So I gave it that score because I'm compensating for my lack of sleep, but for not being compensated well enough for my loss of sleep with a good race. Is that a fair one? Is that fair to do? Yeah.
I can't argue with that. I didn't get much sleep myself, but yeah.
But hopefully in the season, as the season goes on, we start getting more exciting races.
Yeah, I think eventually we will, but I hope it's not a boring processional one like we saw. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think eventually, as you said, the season gets up and running and teams start. Ferrari decide to pull the finger out and fix whatever issues they have with the car. Red Bull finds some more performance, then it's likely you're going to get it. We could end up, I want to see like last year where the top four, everyone in the top four, well, except for Perez, won a race. That's what I want to see this year. I don't want to see the same. Yeah.
So the next race is what, 2 weeks time, right?
It's the first of a triple header. It's going to be Japan. Let me tell you what it is. It's going to be Japan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and then Miami, and then back to Europe. Then the European season starts in May 18 at Imola, and then for the flyaway races, man. Jesus.
Yeah, so there's no F1 this weekend, but it's going to be MotoGP, so we're gonna have that one coming out. So once I'm finished up recording now, I'm gonna pack all of this stuff up, bag it, because it'll be in the car heading for Austin this Friday morning.
You get the merch?
Nah, it's coming out this week. They emailed me. She said the lady said it's going to be ready before I leave on Thursday, on Friday morning early. Looking forward to that. Let's see what happened in this episode of MotoGP. Once again, everyone, thank y'all for tuning in, for listening to the Grand Prix Project. We always appreciate the support. We're trying to get to 1,000 downloads.
Where we at?
That's
now?
the next milestone. We're 40 from 500.
Okay.
And we're barely we're barely at 30 days since we started. So that's the next milestone we need to accomplish is 1,000 download. So everyone, please help us get to that 1,000. Well, please help us get to the 500 first, and then help us get to 1,000. Subscribe to the pod. Follow us on X, GP Project Pod. Follow me on X, the GP Project Dre. And where you at, big bro?
Thanos. That's 7 HANOS 876. And then, like I said, wherever you see fire, that's me.
Thank y'all for tuning in. We appreciate y'all. Thank you for the support. Please like, follow. Peace and love. Much love. Appreciate y'all. Be out.
Thank you for listening to the Grand Prix Project podcast.